Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we unpack complex global dynamics to help you see the hidden patterns. As the great Albert Einstein once observed, the significant problems we face cannot be solved at the same level of thinking we were at when we created them. And today, we're going to challenge some common perceptions and really try to elevate our thinking about a nation that's actively creating its future far beyond its immediate neighborhood, Turkey. Now, for many of us, especially here in India, perceptions of Turkey's foreign policy often kind of solidified after events like Operation Sindoor, a significant regional incident that really underscored strategic alliances. We frequently heard that Turkey's support for Pakistan, particularly on issues like Kashmir, was simply a matter of religious solidarity. Maybe even a nostalgic echo of the Ottoman Empire's past grandeur. It feels like a straightforward narrative, right? But is that simplistic view really the full picture, or is there a much deeper, more calculated strategic game unfolding here? So our mission today is to truly understand Turkey's motivations and its, well, long-term ambitions in the Indian Ocean region, the IOR. We're going to explore the nuanced geopolitical, that's, how power is distributed and used internationally. The geo-economic, which is the interplay of geography and economic activity, and the geostrategic factors, basically the role of geography in military and political planning that are genuinely driving Ankar's moves. For anyone aiming to be truly well-informed on current affairs, especially if you're navigating competitive examinations like the UPSC mains and prelims, or, simply seeking a clearer understanding of international relations for general knowledge, this deep dive is absolutely crucial. Let's explore this.
It's fascinating, isn't it? How often those initial perceptions, while maybe not entirely incorrect, can really obscure the broader strategic landscape. That common Indian perception you mentioned, that Turkey's support for Pakistan, especially on Kashmir, is solely rooted in religious commonality or some ambition to revive Ottoman influence. Well, based on our sources, that's really only partially true.
Only partially true.
Yes. It's a convenient lens, perhaps, but it just doesn't give us the full depth of Ankara's strategy. If we broaden our perspective a bit, the core insight really is that Turkey and Pakistan's partnership isn't new at all. It actually stretches back over 4 decades.
4 decades, wow.
Exactly. And Turkey's backing on the Kashmir issue isn't some isolated gesture. It's actually deeply intertwined with Ankara's 2-decade-long strategic plan to expand its influence far beyond its immediate region, directly into the Indian Ocean.
So this isn't just reacting to events.
Not at all. This isn't a reactive move. It's a deliberate, long-term pivot. Now, when we compare Turkey's IOR ambitions to other non-territorial players, the picture becomes even more intriguing. Our research suggests Turkey's strategic interest in the IOR might actually be older than China's.
Older than China's? That really reframes things.
It absolutely does. It fundamentally reframes how we should view Turkey's long-term strategic depth, doesn't it? This isn't a new player suddenly appearing. It's a deeply entrenched ambition that's been developing for quite some time.
That's a powerful point, because usually when we think of external players in the IOR, it's China's visible presence, particularly with big projects like Sri Lanka's Hambantota port that dominates the conversation. How does Turkey's approach compare?
Well, that's a critical distinction to make. Consider the U.S. They maintain a significant, long-standing military presence at Diego Garcia, recently solidified with an extended lease, even with the complexities around the Chagos Archipelago sovereignty. Then you have France, which has a degree of, let's say, inherent legitimacy due to its Reunion Island territory right there in the IOR.
Okay.
And China's 99-year lease of Hambantota, while there are always concerns about potential dual-use capabilities, the spy ships issue, it's largely framed around trade, transshipment, and bunkering. It provides a distinct economic anchor.
So physical bases or territories for those players.
Precisely. But here's where Turkey stands out. Unlike China, it doesn't possess a physical base or territory like Hambantota in the IOR. Yet this hasn't stopped Ankara one bit. They've been very actively making friends and influencing nations throughout the region. And perhaps precisely because a direct strategic partnership with India in these parts might have been less likely, Turkey has diligently found alternative avenues.
Like working more closely with Pakistan.
Exactly. Working with nations like Pakistan to exert influence. They operate without that traditional physical footprint, which makes their strategy, well, unique and perhaps harder to track sometimes.
This brings us to a really crucial aspect of Turkey's strategy. Its truly unique identity. You described it almost like a nation perched between continents.
It is a historical crossroads.
Yeah, a place where contradictions seem woven into its national identity. Geopolitically, it's this fascinating bridge between Asia and Europe. We see its Asian connections through the Organization of Islamic Countries, the OIC, and of course its deep religious roots. Then there's its geo-economic status, not an EU member, despite wanting that for years. And geostrategically, it's historically aligned with NATO and CENTO, mainly out of fear of the old Soviet Union.
That's right. And that NATO connection is how those early interactions with Pakistan really developed.
It's just a nation of fascinating, sometimes perplexing alignments.
It absolutely is. And think about its position within NATO itself. Turkey is one of only 2 member nations with a strong Islamic majority, 99% Muslim population, alongside Albania.
That's quite striking within NATO.
It is, especially given NATO's broader historical and, let's say, cultural alignments often associated with Christian values. This unique identity is really foundational to its strategic outlook. And speaking of identity, it's worth noting the recent name change, too, to Turkey. Officially adopted in 2023 after notifying the UN in 2021. It's subtle, maybe, but it's a significant reassertion of national identity on the global stage.
A deliberate branding exercise.
You could say that. And what's also key are Turkey's incredibly clear long-term strategic projects. They had the Vision 2023 project, marking the centenary of the post-Ottoman Republic.
Right, I remember hearing about that.
And now they're working towards the Turkey 2053 project, which is timed for the 600th anniversary of the conquest of Istanbul, a hugely important Islamic political milestone.
So very symbolic date.
Extremely symbolic.
Yeah.
And since 2005, Turkey has also pursued what they call a 3-vision foreign policy. It explicitly focuses on Europe, West Asia, and Africa, with the stated aim of, quote, recreating the Ottoman spirit.
Recreating the Ottoman spirit. That sounds ambitious.
It is. And this isn't just talk. It's a framework for concrete action. Their continued push for EU membership, for example, isn't just about joining the club. It's also about leveraging that potential membership to advance their broader geo-economic, geopolitical, and geostrategic ambitions. It really raises a question, doesn't it? Do we, perhaps especially in distant nations like India, truly appreciate the clarity and the long-game nature of Turkey's vision? They show a profound ambition, particularly in technology, including advanced military applications.
And this is where we start to see how that ambitious vision translates into tangible actions, actual influence on the ground. Turkey has, quite rapidly actually, emerged as a genuinely dependable global defense supplier.
That's very true.
Their drones, for instance, had a significant, widely noted impact in the Ukraine-Russia conflict. That really made the world sit up and take notice of their capabilities.
Absolutely. The Bayraktar drones became quite famous.
Exactly. And Pakistan, well, quite expectedly, is one of their close partners in this defense supply chain. But the Maldives case study offers a perfect and very recent illustration of this ambition in action. Turkey, actively, you could say, wooed the incumbent Maldivian president Mohamed Muizzu.
They certainly did.
In fact, Turkey was the very first country he chose to visit after taking office back in November 2023. That sends a pretty clear signal, doesn't it? A shift in diplomatic priorities for Mail.
A very clear signal.
Yeah.
And Turkey didn't just engage diplomatically. They delivered concrete support. They supplied 3 drones to the Maldives.
Drones, right. What were they for?
They were intended to replace India-gifted aircraft specifically for critical maritime surveillance, against drug smuggling and terrorism across the archipelago's vast waters.
Okay, replacing Indian assets, that's significant.
It is. And beyond that, Turkey also donated a naval vessel. It was described as missile-capable, though admittedly it's an older ship, over 40 years old. Our sources even candidly call it a gas guzzler.
A gas guzzler.
But still, the symbolic message from Ankara was undeniably conveyed, a commitment to bolstering Maldivian defense capabilities. And there was even a goodwill visit by Turkey's naval vessel TCG Kinaliada last year, further cementing this burgeoning relationship.
So drones, a ship, naval visits, building ties.
Yes, but perhaps the most critical aspect of this engagement was the explicit attempt to shift Maldivian dependency away from India.
How so?
During President Muizzu's visit to Turkey, President Erdogan apparently promised to deliver the Maldives full year's rations of essentials. We're talking rice, sugar, wheat flour.
A whole year's worth. That's huge for an island nation.
It is. And the clear stated aim, whether it came more from Muizzu or Erdogan or both, was to cut off Maldives' near-exclusive dependence on India for these vital supplies.
Wow. So this wasn't just about trade then?
Not at all. This was a direct geopolitical maneuver. using economic leverage, food security, essentially to try and shift allegiances. It really makes you think, how far will a nation go to strategically reorient a key partner's external relationships?
So, given such a significant promise, did that actually happen? Did Turkey deliver that year's worth of essentials to the Maldives?
Well, this is where the ambition met reality. No, it did not materialize.
It didn't. Why not?
Our sources suggest a couple of possible reasons. Maybe it was the Houthi attacks, disrupting shipping in the Red Sea, making logistics incredibly difficult. Or perhaps other logistical and economic factors just made it unfeasible.
Practical challenges.
Exactly. Whatever the exact reason, the promised supply simply did not arrive. And the direct consequence was that the Maldives, well, quietly had to return to India for these essential supplies.
Despite President Musa's earlier statement.
Yes, despite his earlier public declaration that his nation will not depend on only one source, this outcome wasn't just a logistical blip.
No, it sounds like more than that.
It really highlighted the inherent challenges Turkey faces in projecting that kind of significant soft power and economic influence across vast distances, especially when global supply chains get disrupted. It sort of underscores that even with strong political will, these big promises of dependency shifting can falter, forcing nations back to established ties. It reveals the practical limits of that kind of ambitious outreach.
It's clear then that Turkey's Indian Ocean outreach goes far beyond just simple religious solidarity. It seems Turkey, much like many other nations in this post-Cold War era, harbors significant regional and indeed global ambitions. They seem to see the world as multipolar.
They definitely do. They view themselves as a middle power, and they're actively leveraging their unique geographical location, that bridge between continents, for political, economic, and geostrategic advantage on a much grander scale than perhaps previously acknowledged.
So using geography as a lever.
Precisely. And in this broader geopolitical chessboard, Islam, particularly under President Erdogan's government, is utilized as, let's say, one more strategic chip or perhaps a trump card.
A tool in the toolkit.
Exactly. Islamic nationalism has become a pretty steady staple in their domestic politics. It's a powerful tool for galvanizing support at home.
Does that mean domestic politics dictates this foreign policy?
Well, while Erdogan certainly faces internal challenges, re-election cycles, past street protests like those over the Istanbul mayor's arrest, these domestic issues don't seem to diminish Turkey's unwavering pursuit of its national ambitions. These are deep, long-game objectives that seem to transcend immediate political headwinds.
Okay, so from India's perspective, this is critically important. Turkey's consistent support for Pakistan on the Kashmir issue, which, as you noted, seems to have become louder and more frequent as Islamabad desires.
Yes.
That can be directly connected to these Islamic nationalist and perhaps expansionist tendencies under Erdogan.
That connection seems quite clear based on the analysis.
Yeah.
And this really underscores precisely why nations seeking greater global influence, nations like Turkey, but also the U.S., China, various European nations, view the Indian Ocean as such a crucial arena for presence.
It's like a proving ground for global power status.
In a way, yes. They seem to believe that if they aspire to assert their middle power status, or even want to be global power status, they must be active players here in the IOR.
Which brings us to how India should respond to all this.
Yes, and this is a crucial point about strategic response. While there's often a natural, perhaps emotional temptation to react viscerally to some of Turkey's actions or statements.
Like calls for boycotts.
Exactly. Our sources suggest that those kinds of street calls in India for boycotts of Turkey, similar perhaps to the social media boycott against Maldives we saw a couple of years back, could actually be counterproductive.
Counterproductive? How so?
Well, the concern is that such widespread public actions, if they gain too much momentum, can inadvertently pressure the government. They might feel forced to fall in line with strong public sentiment, potentially hindering New Delhi's ability to handle these complex international issues with the maturity and strategic finesse they really require.
So it could tie the government's hands when a more nuanced approach is needed.
Precisely. It's a clear call for strategic thought, for considered policy, to perhaps override immediate emotional reactions, however understandable they might be.
Absolutely. It's a truly nuanced and intricate dance on a global stage. So as we wrap up this deep dive, here's a thought for you, our listeners, to ponder. Given Turkey's complex, evolving identity, its clear long-term strategic vision for regions like the Indian Ocean, and its tangible moves to expand influence, how might India best navigate this evolving geopolitical landscape? How can policymakers and indeed citizens balance those immediate concerns like the support for Pakistan with the critical long-term strategic imperatives? It's a compelling puzzle, really, for anyone seeking to make sense of our interconnected world. Now, if you found this deep dive valuable, and especially if you're a UPSC aspirant looking for this kind of in-depth analysis of current events, please do hit that like button. It genuinely helps us know we're hitting the mark and providing useful insights.
Feedback is always helpful.
And of course, please subscribe to the deep dive for more such explorations into the stories behind the headlines. We love hearing from you, so definitely leave a comment below, ask your questions, suggest other areas you'd like us to explore in future deep dives. Your queries really do drive our next investigations. Until next time, keep digging deeper.